You're listening to the APSE Podcast, the Association of People Supporting Employment First, with your host, Chris Davies. Today's podcast is brought to you by Reach for Resources, a nonprofit providing individualized, competitive employment services for people with disabilities. We believe our community is a better place when it is inclusive and everyone, regardless of ability, has the chance to be successful. Learn more at reachforresources.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Minnesota APSE Podcast. Hard to believe this is episode 7 of season 3. We're recording today on October 27th, 2023. We're so delighted to have our guest, Jay Magrisso, here with us today. Been getting to know Jay in studio here, and just a really, really nice man with a lot of interesting background that I think you're all going to enjoy learning about, and really looking forward to our discussion, Jay.
Likewise.
As I always do, if this is your first time popping into the Minnesota APSE Podcast, welcome. It's an extra special day because it's our first podcast with our sponsor, Reach for Resources. So happy to have them on board and sponsoring the podcast. So if you are just new to APSE and Minnesota APSE, it stands for Association for People Supporting Employment First. We are truly the only national membership organization that solely advocates for integrated competitive employment, one person, one job at a time, customized employment practices. And we really believe that, employment is the avenue out of isolation and poverty. And so that's what we're all about. And we've been doing these podcasts now for a few years, and we're delighted to have our guest, Jay, here with us today. And before I pass it over to Jay, I'm going to give my visual description. Today I am wearing blue jeans and a checkered blue button-down shirt. I just shaved this morning, so my head is bald as bald can be, and I've got a red beard. So that's a little bit about my visual description. So, Jay.
Yes. Hi, Chris. My name is Jay Magrisso, and visual description, I have dark hair and a beard. I'm wearing a black sort of flannel button-down shirt, jeans, and blue sneakers, and I have olive skin.
Very nice. Thank you, Jay. So Jay and I were just catching up a little bit, as I mentioned, and Jay is from Queens, New York, and so we were reminiscing about different family and people that we know, in New York. And this time, Jay, I just really love for you to let our audience know, a little bit more about yourself, some things about your background.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me as well. I was born in Queens, New York, Floral Park, if you're familiar, and lived there till I was about 13 before moving to York, Pennsylvania, when my mom got remarried. Happy birthday to Mom, by the way.
Yes, happy birthday, Mom.
We lived in York, which was, kind of south central PA, west of Philadelphia. And I lived there until college. Went to Bucknell University. So I'm a proud Bison. And then went to abroad. I lived abroad, and I lived in Italy, actually. And I spent time traveling and teaching English. And then came back to the States and got involved with some nonprofit work for a while, and then made my way to Boston and got involved with video game development. And I was part of a developer called Harmonix, and I worked there for the better part of a decade, probably around 8 or so years, working on all different types of Rock Band iterations, and then did some work in audio software. And then we made a decision to move the family out west here to Minnesota. And then I've been working in consulting basically since then for a couple of different places.
Right on. Well, I got to be honest. It's the first time I've felt we're out west here in Minnesota. So that's I like that. I like that analogy. Head west, as they say. That's fascinating that you worked on. You're one of, if I'm understanding this correctly, one of the original developers of the Rock Band software. Is that what? Is that how we understand it?
So yeah, I guess I can qualify
phenomenal.
that a little bit. Guitar Hero was one of the earliest ones that people will probably recognize from that genre. Although there were obviously other karaoke games. It's a whole other podcast for the history of music video games. But yeah, I think I've worked on pretty much most of the iterations of Rock Band over the course of the years. Probably the biggest highlight was the Beatles Rock Band, which I think I wouldn't be alone from the studio in kind of highlighting that as a key one.
Yeah, I can only imagine there's got to be a lot of people watching or listening today that probably have played Rock Band, and that's pretty neat to have somebody that's had such a hand in the development of that. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. So you were teaching English in Italy. How long were you there?
About 3 years.
Yeah, a few years. Where were you in Italy?
Mostly Rome.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very
good.
This
was right around the time when Pope Ratzinger, or Pope Benedict, I should say, sort of was elected or voted in. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what year that was.
2002 to 2005 was when I was there.
All right. Sounds good. I know my brother and his family would be able to give you all the so I sort of dropped out a little bit, so to speak. So, all right. So, in your early career, you're doing some team building and project management. And I remember when we met earlier in the week, you had mentioned just sort of how important teamwork was to you. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I've always been involved in sports from a very young age. Mostly tennis was probably my preferred sport growing up, and then. As somebody, I'm 5'6", so I'm not the tallest person, but I did love basketball, or I do love basketball still. And, that was my sort of second sport that I played a lot. And, through that love of the sport, and interest in coaching, I was able to connect with, a few of the women's basketball players from our freshman year. They were on we were on the same hall, and they were looking for, a manager. And I said, yeah, sure, I would do that, or however that conversation went, all those years ago. And yeah, I was able to kind of be a team manager, and then I also helped a little bit with JV activities and got to practice with the women in drills and different activities, which was cool. So that was a really special part of my college experience in particular. And like I was saying to you earlier. My senior year, we won the Patriot League championship, and we went down to Baylor first round of the tournament. So that was really cool.
That's fun. What year was that exactly?
2002.
2002.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, that's a blast. There's nothing like being, I think, so closely to a team that has achieved something like that and gets to go to the big dance together. That must have been a real thrill.
Yeah.
So.
But I was also studying, psychology, psychology major and education minor. But sports psychology in particular was a really interesting area and always had been for me. And so I was really interested in, team cohesion, motivation, and things like that. And, seeing that played out through the course of practices and seeing that game plan get executed in games, and through the season was a really rewarding experience to kind of see some things get put into practice, right?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, so you've got you're seeing your theories and actually in practice, developing in front of you. That's fun. And I gotta say, you mentioned you were 5'6". Have you ever heard of Muggsy Bogues?
Of course.
Yes. Yeah, he's my hero. So, cause I was very short growing up. I was 5'2" when I got my driver's license. So, late developer. And, so Muggsy Bogues was my hero, as an NBA player at 5'3". So I kept playing basketball, and then eventually you can't tell sitting in a chair, but I grew a little bit. So, it all worked out. But
Spud Webb is another one.
Spud Webb, yes.
Well, I still think I can dunk sometimes.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
I wish I had that belief in myself. So, all right. So that's all really cool stuff. And I know, one of the key reasons you're here today is to talk a little bit about, something that happened in your life that has, dramatically affected you and sort of the path that you took and some of the things you've done in recent years. So I'm referring to Acoustic Neuroma.
Correct.
And if you could tell our audience a little bit about, that experience and what that was like and what came from that.
Yeah. So, well, when I guess this was 2019, I started to really recognize some things that were starting to be different, right? And I was kind of ending my 30s, entering my 40s, and I didn't know what that really meant physically, right? Other than the idea of just, getting older. And so I started to notice some facial numbness, my lips and sort of cheek area. My hearing started to kind of get a little bit wonky, I guess I can say. In and out.
One of my favorite words, by the way.
Wonky. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a good book that we liked at the family, at the house called The Wonky Donkey. So
the Wonky Donkey. All right. Write that down.
Shout out to that book. So my left ear was primarily my hearing ear and my phone call ear and all that stuff. And then I started to recognize that I couldn't really hear people on the phone. And so I started to raise the volume, and then ultimately I just had to switch ears. Walking down the hall at work with people, I kept saying to myself, gee, why are they whispering? It's just us. Is there something that I'm missing, or maybe I shouldn't be speaking as loudly? But they weren't. Ultimately, I found out I just couldn't hear them as well. So, I started to kind of explore this once I recognized it and sought some support, medical support, trying to understand what might be going on. And, at first I think it was kind of like, well, yeah, you are just getting old, and, you went to a lot of concerts, and hearing is one of those things that just goes. So, just be mindful of that. Maybe an ear infection, was also a thought. And, but the symptoms didn't really go away. In fact, they got worse. They then came headaches, tinnitus, and then as we got further along, balance. I'm a pretty athletic person, and sports has always been a huge part of my life. And noticing that, as I'm bending over, I'm falling over, and I have to catch myself. Yeah. Or playing basketball, I'm getting jostled, and then I'm falling down, more easily.
I would imagine that really got your attention.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's weird. It got my attention, but then it also, I want to say it didn't, because you kind of just, you rationalize it, you couch it as like, again, just getting older. There's nothing unique about me necessarily. It's just this thing that's happening. I should probably just stretch more and get more sleep, but even after all those things, it wasn't getting better. And so finally, after being more and more vocal that no, something I think is wrong, and kind of listing some of these symptoms to providers, they were kind of like, well, I guess there is this thing, potentially this rare thing. So let's go and check it out and rule that out. Right. And so that led to an MRI, and then that led to a phone call at like 5:00 on a Friday from someone saying, so there's something that we found, and you're going to want to get it checked out and taken care of.
That must have been a scary moment.
It was a super scary moment. And, going back to the idea of being vocal about it, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, right? But certainly for me, I thought about all those weeks, months prior where those symptoms sort of popped up, and I didn't really pay attention to them. I didn't take stock. I didn't give them proper consideration. And, I was kind of pretty scared, to be honest, and not sure what that meant. Hadn't heard about this diagnosis before, which was an acoustic neuroma, which is a brain tumor. And you start to think about those thoughts of like, well, what's going to happen, and start to regret, oh, I should have said something earlier, I should have done something different. And those are some of the early thoughts, which is tough.
I apologize if this is a hard question, but was there any information that you learned that if you had, say, had an MRI sooner, it would have you would have been able to limit the growth of the tumor?
Yeah, was
there any of that?
That's a great question.
And I'm asking that mainly for our audience, in case anybody's out there, experiencing symptoms like the ones you just described.
Yeah, if anyone is experiencing symptoms, in general, I would definitely recommend advocating for yourself and speaking to your provider and making sure that you're sharing what your experience is with someone that will listen to the things that you feel are going on, because it's cliche to say, but your body best, and what you are capable of doing, what you are capable of doing, and how that changes over time. And so it's okay to call that out and to seek that help. For acoustic neuromas, which I guess I'm not the medical expert here, but it's actually the tumor that grows off of the the auditory nerve, and the vestibular schwannoma is another name. It's a growth of the overgrowth of the Schwann cell. It sort of sheaths the nerve. Anyway.
Okay.
I didn't have all those notes down, so
that's okay.
Pardon me if I've gotten some of that wrong. So I'm also a little bit nervous, if you can't tell.
Well, I'm not a doctor either, Jay, and I don't play one on TV.
Some of the people that are watching,
Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
Can fact check me. Yeah, good to know. Also, but yeah, so obviously, the sooner you catch something like a tumor,
sure,
the more opportunities and options you have. Mm-hmm. For me, I did not have very many options. My tumor was just about 3 centimeters, which is, size of a ping pong ball, golf ball. Yeah. And it was also it was compressing my cerebellum, my brainstem, which is where a lot of the other symptoms and experiences I was seeing and feeling were stemming from. So yeah, they're generally very small, very slow growing, benign tumors. And the sooner you catch them, you have a lot more options. There are options such as doing nothing, right? Watching and waiting, which is a totally legitimate course. There are radiation, different types of radiation treatments that you can do. Or there's surgery. And then even within surgery, you have different options available depending on a multitude of factors. Whether you have hearing, the placement of the tumor, the size of the tumor, obviously probably being the biggest one. There's, a middle fossa kind of going in over here. There's a translab, which is going through the labyrinth of the ear canal. And then there's the retrosigmoid, which is kind of going in behind the ear, which is the one that I had. Okay. And so there are different reasons and justifications for, why you might want to consider those things. But the only recommendation I would have, I guess, all this is my personal, opinion, right? Sure. Not medical advice or legal advice, et cetera. Would it just be to seek multiple opinions and make sure you feel comfortable with, your decision and, because there are a lot of thoughts and a lot of decisions to kind of weigh.
Absolutely. And so for you, I don't remember, I'm sorry, the name of the procedure, but you had that done. So you had your neuroma, if I'm saying that right, or tumor removed. Yeah, completely.
I think it was just a craniotomy. So
so they called it a craniotomy.
Just kind of get in there and open it up, and
not scary at all,
right?
I mean, geez,
wow,
that must have been a really big day. So after that procedure, after you had that taken out, what happened next for you?
Yeah, so I should mention, one of the great benefits of being here in Minnesota was having the support and availability of my family and friends here. Obviously Mary's family and friends, which was just a second, extended family to me, and they welcomed us. Obviously Mayo is a big part of the Minnesota health scene, but also nationally. And I was able to work with, they were able to work with me and it's just right down the road. So it worked out that I came to Minnesota and had, a great facility like that, just kind of right there. So, I think that, sorry, can I get you to repeat your question?
Oh, yeah, that's quite all right. My question was just, after you had your surgery,
yes,
what was the recovery like? And then also that led you down some other paths.
Yeah. So, the recovery was, I would say, pretty significant. I ended up being out of work for about 3 months.
Okay.
Taking short-term disability.
Sure.
And, one of the things that I knew was likely going to be a challenge going in, but didn't know exactly how it was going to impact me coming out of it, was loss of balance. My vision wasn't quite the same as it used to be. Everything kind of, it's a kind of a grab bag of symptoms experience. Okay. Like I mentioned a couple headaches and balance and things like that, but there's also brain fog, fatigue, loss of taste, numbness, and this also could be like facial paralysis is also another area that could affect people. So, and then this eye doesn't always work the same, and I'm favoring my left eye because this is my side. It's also why I'm sitting on this side. Chris was nice enough to give up his captain's chair here.
Well, no thank you is needed, and I'm actually realizing I kind of like the couch. I might stick here.
Yeah, yeah. So coming out of surgery, I knew I had, I don't know exactly what the percentage was, but I had, let's say, a 5% chance of retaining my hearing because of the size and location of my tumor. Unfortunately, we found out that in really the last hour, the 11th hour, which is kind of appropriate because I think my surgery was about 11 hours or 12 hours long.
11 hours. Holy
in
cow.
that sort of 11th hour, I ended up losing my hearing completely on my left side.
All right. So I'm guessing obviously, well, I shouldn't say the word obviously, but I'm guessing the hope with the surgery was that they'd be able to preserve your hearing. So they're being very careful about nerves and things like that. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm even less medically savvy than you are. I mean, that didn't sound right. You are
Sure.
medically savvy, but that's what I'm guessing. So it sounds like in the 11th hour that wasn't able to be to get what they needed out.
Yeah.
You lost your hearing in your left side.
Correct. Yeah, there was certainly plenty of discussions going into surgery, understanding what the situation could be, the outcomes, right? You always have those discussions. And they had a team, right? So one person is kind of in there and one person is also monitoring, my hearing. And so, yeah, my hearing, I ended up losing that. The primary objective, I would say, just to qualify that, was to get the tumor, get as much of the tumor out as possible.
Absolutely. Yes.
This is the second order for me, and everyone's situation is different, right? Mm-hmm. For me, was to preserve facial functionality. Yeah. Because that's also a risk, and I also, going into surgery, I had paralysis visible. Okay. So we thought that I was more likely to. I should expect that more likely coming out of it because I had that going in. I fortunately had a great outcome, and not everyone is as lucky, but certainly fortunate there. But yeah, so the order of operations was certainly to obviously come out of the surgery, but then to come out of it without the tumor. They could keep that, and then facial function, and then hearing would certainly be the nice to have there. Yeah,
and then how far down the road was it? When you were introduced to the Acoustic Neuroma Association, and if you could tell us a little bit about that journey, because a lot has come from that.
For sure. Once I got the phone call hearing about my diagnosis, started the immediate Google searching and trying to understand what was going on. So I definitely reached out to different groups on Facebook and on the internet, trying to find any information I could, right? good, bad, or ugly, as it were, and I got all of it. So
that's the internet in a mouthful, right there.
Yeah. But one of the resources that I came across was the Acoustic Neuroma Association, and they really stood out as being kind of like a lighthouse or beacon of information for people like me. And so, one of the first things I did that weekend, obviously, other than calling family and friends, was signing up for their newsletter and kind of getting my name on the list to get materials. And they sent me really quickly a packet of information that they send everybody, who's newly diagnosed or signs up. And it was chock full of information about, what this is, what I could maybe expect, but also super valuably, they included a list of peer mentors and support groups. And I started to reach out to some of those folks that seemed like they had some similar experiences to what I might have been going through, or what I was going through. And through that, I was able to meet one of the peer mentors, who was also a Minnesota support group leader at the time. And he introduced me to the Minnesota support group, and he shared his experience, was super helpful. He had kind of a crazy roller coaster of things as well, with multiple surgeries and well, I should say emergent surgeries as well.
Right.
As a result, it wasn't, sort of the planned out situation that I was fortunately able to kind of go through. So then we went to, he invited me to a local support group meeting where I participated. I actually went to the support group. It was probably within a week or so after getting out of recovery, from Mayo.
Okay.
And they were obviously, super, super welcoming. Hi, Laura and Steve, if you're watching. Laura and Steve are the fine and talented Minnesota support group leaders that we have here.
Very nice, very nice.
And they've been such a huge help for me over the years. And just the broader Acoustic Neuroma Association and community. And then through that, I met another local Minnesota representative of the Acoustic Neuroma, Nancy Ryan, who's a board member.
Okay.
And through going to meetings and discussing, sort of my circumstances, my situation, my interests, and sharing feedback about, particularly about the employment situation. And she shared that, one of the initiatives that was going on at the time was the Acoustic Neuroma Association, the board, was having sort of a task force subcommittee, if you will, focusing on employment and supporting employment for people like myself. And she asked if I'd be interested in sort of joining that in, I guess in a consulting type capacity.
Sure.
So that's a little bit of how we got plugged in there.
Yeah. So you did much more than just receive information from the association. You got really involved, and from what I understand, we're part of, like you said, a task force that created some recommendations, employment considerations for people experiencing acoustic neuroma. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you got connected to some folks over at Voc Rehab, Deed.
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us more about how you got connected in there and some of the work that you did and recommendations that you came up with.
Yeah. No, thank you. You're exactly right. So one of the outcomes or the outputs of that task force was to create sort of, I think it's bigger than a pamphlet. It's it's materials. We call it, it's titled, Employment Considerations for Acoustic Neuroma Patients. And really what it represents is, a bunch of recommendations, things that we thought were valuable to consider and, to consider when you are kind of navigating the workspace, and dealing with an acoustic neuroma diagnosis or treatment, whether you're, really at any stage of your your journey, I guess is what we would say. So, like I said before, whether you're watching and waiting and kind of seeing how that goes, how the tumor may or may not grow, or you are doing a radiation type path, or you're doing a surgical approach, the way that the material is sectioned is just that. It's sort of catered to each path, choose your own adventure style of, things that you might want to consider given your circumstances, right? So somebody who is watching and waiting and has a very small tumor, or, may not choose to disclose, because maybe they're symptom free, or maybe that, they're not quite ready, and there isn't any other symptoms that would be outwardly presenting. Someone who is choosing radiation, might disclose differently as well because of what their expectations are for their recovery. And then somebody who's having surgery, like myself, obviously I was going to be out for quite a while, and needed to obviously speak about that and talk through how that was going to work logistically with my my clients that I had at my time, and the rest of the team and the organization.
Yeah. It sounds like the recommendations were very personal in the way that one could take where they were at with their journey, and as you described, if A, then this, if B, then this. It sounds like a very comprehensive approach and beneficial.
Yeah.
Tell us more about your journey back to work.
Yeah. I think I was very fortunate because I got great advice from a lot of the peer mentors, and I tried to put that into practice. But going back to work was a scary experience. This was right at January 2020, when I went back to the office to try and feel it out. And losing my hearing was an adjustment. I had pretty good hearing going in. Not perfect, obviously, but still pretty good and functional. And it became 0.
Okay.
So I think I should say it's technical, medical is like profoundly deaf, unilateral deafness.
Okay.
On my left side. So,
sure.
But I had issues with balance, like I mentioned. I had issues tracking visually and sort of changing my focus level. So depth of field was really an issue. And so going back to an open office was something I was pretty scared about, because, looking at my desk and screen time was already going to be challenging, right? But then also looking up and kind of out into an open office was also going to be a separate issue. And I was really struggling with that. Also, one of the quirks, I don't know if that's fair to say, with single-sided or being single-sidedly deaf is the loss of sound location. So I can't tell where sound is coming from, which is great for my kids when they're playing hide and seek, but terrible for me when I'm, at...
Hopefully you're not still looking for them.
No. No, but my daughter is very, very good at hide and seek, like scarily good. But also, oddly, when, you're out in nature and you hear a mosquito, it's actually like that much more scary, because you're like, I don't know where this mosquito is, and it's hard enough to find it. And so I just am looking everywhere. Yeah. So this side of my face that tends to get eaten up a lot.
Oh boy.
Anyway, so single-sided deafness is a challenge. And I think in the workplace, not only do you have to be mindful of that in terms of where you're seated like this, but it's also the number of auditory inputs that are happening, because everything's just going in here. So when multiple people are speaking, it's a challenge, and I can't tell exactly who's speaking.
Okay.
And let's see. People coming up to speak to me, they have to make sure that I can see them or come up to my good side, let's say. Otherwise, I'm not going to know they're there. Sure. So that could be startling. I've definitely been in situations, even recently, where people have been speaking and not knowing that, I have this deafness on my left side. Just kind of thinking maybe I'm ignoring them or that I'm coming across a little bit rude. that happens, that certainly happens.
Yeah, that's, good considerations for all of us, to think about, not just assume. And it is, the way you describe it, it really illustrates how delicately balanced our senses are. And I think if we have full capacity of our senses, we sort of, can. I know I can take it for granted that I have those, and you really learn just how having hearing on both sides balances things out. So it's very. I really appreciate you being willing to share that with us. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. And then you got back. Currently, you're back working with Stoneridge Software, right?
Yeah.
And just for 3 months now, is that right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And if it's okay, just to mention, one other point with the Acoustic Neuroma Association, that initial introduction to them, I should have said I was fortunate enough to get, they extended an offer for me to join the board of directors fully. So I've been on the board of directors there, formally for about, a year or so.
Okay, great.
And, it's been really rewarding. I'm also a peer mentor. And so, one of the things I really like about that experience is being able to kind of come full circle.
Yeah.
To, not just be a patient, but also be a participant in sort of helping shape how the Acoustic Neuroma Association supports others, and just being there to be an advocate and a mentor for others in that similar situation.
Since you said that, Joe, thank you. Or Jay, sorry.
No, Joe is my grandfather's name, so it's okay too.
Okay. Is your grandfather still with us?
He is not.
He's not. Okay. No. Well, thinking of you today, Joe.
For sure.
So Jay, since you shared that, if somebody out there listening is hearing you talk and is interested in getting involved, what's the website? What's the best way to find it?
ANAUSA.org, the Acoustic Neuroma Association. Really, I think we're the preeminent resource for people that are dealing or diagnosed with acoustic neuromas, or are caregivers of that, or are have a loved one that has been diagnosed. We do really great work. It's a small but mighty team there, kind of down in Georgia. And, one of the really cool things, being on this side of it now, has been getting to see all the work that goes into it. And we're really becoming, one of the leaders in funding research now on this, this diagnosis, this space.
Wow.
And, it's really rewarding to see, because there's a lot of really exciting research that's happening. And so that's a large part of where, funds go is to research now.
Sure. That's fantastic. You're really, doing some cool things with the association. So it's ANAUSA.org.
Correct. And maybe I can send it
That's
to...
an easy one to remember.
Hopefully.
Well, hopefully, yeah. It has very phonic sound to it.
Yes.
Anyway.
And the employment considerations material is available there as well.
Yeah, so that's in there as well. So great. And you did some work with, was DEED a real part of that as well? Department of Employment Economic Development? Yeah,
more recently. So, as many of us right now in the workforce are experiencing transitions through for different reasons and different circumstances. And so, through a recent transition, I was connected with DEED and Career Force. Hi, Sue, Saeed, if you're watching, thank you so much. And so Sue, through our discussions, and knowing a little bit about my circumstances, recommended, vocational rehabilitation services as something that might be a resource to consider. I hadn't heard about that. And, to be honest, I didn't consider myself to be, I don't know, deserving or needed, like meeting the threshold of getting additional services. Which is ironic because I have a history and background of advocating for individuals and families and things like that. So, as she started to say it, I said, you know what, I think I will. And so she connected me to Mary Reese at VRS, and then I got in touch with Christine Marble through that as well, and just amazing people that work there and amazing services that they provide. So thank you for that. But yeah, Chris and I were able to meet over a number of different sessions and provided a huge amount of resources that were really influential for me personally, and then also recently, kind of as a, in recognition of all of that, valuable knowledge, I was able to convince she and Mary her and Mary to come to an Acoustic Neuroma support group meeting, and they did a great session.
Good.
We had really great attendance and really great valuable, comments, expressing their thanks from the community. Mm-hmm. And so, just a hugely valuable resource there. And so Chris and I spoke about all different types of things, tools, tips, techniques to bring into the workplace, to make sure that, I'm successful, that we're successful as I start this new job, at Stoneridge Software.
Yeah, very good. And Chris, as you know, but, to let our audience know, introduced us to Jay, and we're lucky enough to work with Chris on the Minnesota APSI board, and delighted. And she's just a great advocate, great connector. So we're really delighted that she introduced us to you, so we could get to have this discussion today. And you had just segued into Stoneridge, so tell us all about Stoneridge.
Yeah, so Stoneridge Software is a Microsoft Dynamics consulting agency, and we do actually we just celebrated our 11th year anniversary this week, so I know there's a lot of people who are going to be celebrating later today as well. And yeah, I was going to say it's a small organization, but I don't know that that's true anymore. We're doing some really exciting things and continuing to grow. I don't know if the exact number, but I think it's multiple hundreds, probably 200 to 300 people now. So quite large, and the reach is growing, but I think we're a premier partner of, Microsoft Dynamics implementations and consulting. So bringing that to different organizations in different verticals. And the experience has really been great. Honestly, they have had the best onboarding experience, that I can remember. Really just robust information for a new person to the space, but we have sessions with leaders, to kind of get more background. There was, a lot of do-it-yourself learnings.
Okay.
So pre-created material that is, specific for the role and for the organization, that's available and super flexible as well. They have values. One of the things that I was drawn to was just the simplicity of their core values, but they resonated really, really well with me. And, one of those I think is appropriate is, enjoying your work. And I think that on the surface is, yes, we want to just enjoy the work, but I think it's also enjoying the people that we're working with, right? And I think that's been a really clear, positive, standout thing that I've noticed at Stoneridge is that we're, they hired me not just for a role, but they hired me, and I think that is a really special thing. And that's not just because of my diagnosis. In fact, I didn't necessarily share that initially. There were some people that did know, but that wasn't really the conversation at all. It was just the interest in the work and the fit for that role, but also, who am I as a person, and making sure that I was a culture fit as well. And that I think was really great. But there's a lot of really great work that we're doing at Stoneridge to continue to build out the DEI and DIB space to make sure that everyone has a voice and everyone feels included.
That's great. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important to us as well. And it sounds like they have a very holistic approach where they really see the person, not just the technical skills that they might present. When you were onboarding or are going into your new job, did you use any of the employment considerations that you have illustrated, for others?
Yes.
Specifically?
Yes. I also used some of the tools and techniques that Chris has shared as well. Actually, now that I've said her name, I am immediately trying to be cognizant about my speech and make sure that I'm slowing down and speaking more clearly. So thank you, Chris, again. I think, one of the main ones is certainly how and where and if you disclose, and to what degree. Do I share with my team? Do I share with, clients? Do I share with the organization? And what does that mean? Because it's one thing to say that I'm hard of hearing, but it's another to say, I'm deaf, and when we're on a Zoom call or a Teams call, having video is helpful, or I need to have the captioning because, luckily, the pandemic did a lot of things for all of us, but increasing and remote work and video conferencing and sort of adding features to that space was certainly a benefit, because now captioning is sort of built in. Although captioning that you get out of the box isn't perfect, right?
Sure.
And so it's not the same as having, cart services or having, an interpreter there or something like that. And so it's not perfect. It's just kind of whatever the AI is picking up and doing an approximation of what it's hearing. And certainly there are issues with that, but I certainly, use that daily in every conversation, kind of looking back to see if I've missed anything or make sure I have the context. But, somebody who's deaf, or partially deaf, I should say, I'm looking at all those cues. I don't say, and I have said this, but I know better. I don't say that I can read lips because, at best I get a little bit of information from there. I think that through Hollywood we have kind of like this idea, right? That people, if you read lips, you can kind of like, I don't know, you have a superpower sort of,
sure.
Right? And that's not true. Chris has some great material that she shared where, all of these different factors really impede the message. And so if a message is being delivered and my hand is up, or I'm taking a drink of water, or I'm not looking at the camera, or I'm speaking loudly or not speaking clearly, facial hair, I'm not sure if I said that. All these things can sort of muddy the waters a little bit in terms of receiving that information. And even without all of those factors, it's still very, very difficult to actually read lips. So this idea that, I'm looking through the binoculars and, through a sniper rifle and seeing, what people are talking about is kind of a fantastical, interpretation of what is realistic. So yeah, certainly the considerations of how to disclose and when to disclose was a big part of that.
Yeah.
And then trying to employ and still trying to employ these things, getting better and better about my own self-advocacy. Because oftentimes it is hard, to kind of put yourself out there and give yourself space and make sure that you take the time to advocate for what you need and what's going to make you successful. So it's something that I continue to work with them on, with Chris on, and just work on personally.
Yeah. Well, it's very evident and clear that you are committed to personal growth, and I really want to commend you, because I think as human beings sometimes it's hard to adapt the things that we teach. So
Absolutely.
it's a very kind classic phenomenon that sometimes we will teach others to do a certain thing, but then we don't adapt that ourselves. And it sounds like you really are doing both. That you're supporting and enlightening others, and you're also learning from your own teachings, if you will, and those around you, and then applying those. So
yeah, I'm definitely working.
It's good stuff.
Thank you. I'm definitely a work in progress, as we all are.
Absolutely.
So when I hear, or if I read something, whether it's a technique or a tool from academia or from a book I read, I try and hold on to it. So, whether I take a note about it or not, I think that it helps make sure that it's staying with me. And it doesn't always come out, but I certainly try and keep that in mind. One of the things that I guess I'm thinking of right now is, are you familiar with the power of yet, this concept of yet?
I don't know if I am familiar with that. I'm familiar with the power of now.
Yeah.
Tell me about yet.
So yet is a really powerful word. Yet is this idea that, if I don't know something, if I don't know how to do something, if I can't do something right now, it's not that I can't do it. Yeah. It's I can't do it yet. Right. Okay. And so there's a lot of research. I think, I should probably talk to you after and send you a link, but I'm looking at our producer here. But I think her name is Dr. Carol Dweck, possibly. And there's some really great TED Talks. But she gets into the idea that, being fixed, there's a fixed growth, there's a fixed mindset, right? And there's a growth mindset. And so I've really tried to make sure I'm maintaining a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And this ties into this power of yet.
Power
and
of
so,
yet.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Yeah. So I do that.
I'm just rolling through things that in my own life that I can apply that to.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, because if you think about it as we're all fixed and this is like what we can learn and this is what we know how to do and that's the end of it. It's really limiting, right? Yeah. And if you give yourself the grace of yet, and this power of yet, it really allows you to explore and be gracious with yourself and give yourself space to explore new areas. And one way that I think I remind myself about that is through martial arts. And I've always been an avid martial arts fan, and over the last decade or two, I've gotten more involved with martial arts, and that's one of the things that I continue to this day. And actually has been a huge helpful note for me in my own recovery as well. And so I get to do, I'm doing Taekwondo, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai right now. And so hi to Classic Taekwondo Studios, hi to Burnsville Martial Arts Academy, and thank you all for all of your support. It's been great because martial arts not only helps with the physical aspects of recovery, strength, conditioning, all those things, but also grounding, humbling also, but also reminding you that I don't know how to do this thing yet.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
I really, really like that a lot. I'm going to take that with me today. That's good stuff. And when you're talking about we're all works in progress, I completely agree, with that. I've always sort of had a personal philosophy that I'll never arrive, that it's about the journey. Cause if you've arrived, well, where do you go from there?
Right.
So, that's good stuff. So if I, may say just in our discussions before we got into the podcast, you'd mentioned that, you've been watching some of our podcasts, if I may say, even becoming a fan of our podcasts. And so as a fan of the podcast, that we always like to, as we're starting to wind down, ask that question about the future. And we would like to ask you, what are some of your thoughts, hopes, and dreams for the future of employment, not just for people with an acoustic neuroma, but people with other challenges and disabilities? Yeah, no,
I love that segment, and I'm a fan of you as well, Chris.
There's one. Thanks, Jay.
I will thumbs up the YouTube video later. So that's me. I think that my wish, I guess, in my ideal vision of the future would be, and I'm going to say this not just for all of you, but also my future self looking at this later, is for things to be easier, to speak about the things that you need to be successful, to advocate for yourself, to not pre-opt out of services, support, care because of an idea that you or perception that you may have. Have a conversation before you have a narrative attached to it. And so I think if there's a place where I'm better, where it's easier to speak about the things that I need, whether it's in a meeting or with an organization or, in a different forum, I think that would be great for that just to be more of a comfortable experience, more accepted experience. And I think we're moving in that direction, but it certainly doesn't always feel that way.
Sure. Yeah. I really like what you have to say there. It really ties into our philosophy of the concept of employment first, which is that you don't, anyone should be expected they can work, not that you have to opt into work. Rather, if you decide for whatever reason you're not going to work, that would be your decision. But everybody is expected that they can work, that wants to work. So I love those philosophies. I got to tell you, I really like the shout-outs today.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it starts a new tradition with our APSI podcasts. I thought it was just beautiful how you wove all those in. And my last question I have to ask you is, does your mom live in town? And if she does, will you be celebrating with your mom tonight? And what will you be doing?
Yeah.
Not that you have to disclose where you'll be,
for sure,
for the audience out there. But
yeah, my mom is not in town.
Okay,
she is in Florida.
Okay,
but she will be coming here later this year to visit, spend some time with the family.
Good. Well, the temperature's been dropping today. As we said at the beginning, it's October 27th. So Florida sounds like a good place to be today. That's for sure. Hopefully she's having a great day. So happy birthday again, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Well, thanks so much. This has really been a blast. Is there anything else that you're just like maybe itching to tell everybody, or any thoughts that you didn't get to relay? One thing that I think we didn't really touch on, that was a big part of my life, is going back a little bit to the game space, and being involved with games and games development for so long, and supporting the teams, the creative endeavors, having that be such a part of my life, and being an avid game player, a gamer myself, things really changed with the diagnosis. I lost a lot of enjoyment for the things that I was doing. So sports also was, like I said, was affected, but also, gaming was also, because audio is such a huge component of games, right? Maybe it's not the first thing that you might say, but positional audio, where are things coming from is a huge aspect. And I think accessibility in the game space is definitely part of the conversation. But I'd love to see that be more of a part of the conversation. And there are different sort of areas of accessibility that maybe have a lot of effort versus others. And it's a really challenging dynamic or balance to strike when you're trying to figure out, how you're going through the course of development. The features and functionality that are built for including all players oftentimes are not considered the marquee features. And I would love, so another vision that I would say for the future, it would be to continue to, just improve it in that space and make sure that gaming is available to all of us, because, I certainly don't have the same experience now. And I'm still looking for, resources and games that I can enjoy, like I did before. So, that would be another area. That's fabulous. Would it be too big a comment to say there might be some inventions in the future?
If anybody would like consulting or collaboration, let me know. I'd be happy to share thoughts. There's already a lot of great organizations in the space. Able Gamers is a huge advocate for a number of people that have all different types of needs, and there are fairly robust documentation for what might be or what might be considered best practices. It's one thing to have the documentation; it's another thing to actually put that into practice and allocate dollars for that development effort. And there are some folks that are doing it. I think, I just was recently looking at, a Fortnite video and there is really great accessibility functionality in there as well. And the funny thing about accessibility, is that oftentimes it's beneficial for everyone. So this feature, which is kind of visualizing sound effects, on a map, is all of a sudden becoming a widely adopted feature for everybody because it helps everybody. Yes. Just like closed captioning if you're a restaurant.
Yeah, adaptations are universal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a really interesting space, and I certainly have thoughts and opinions and would love to collaborate with anybody.
Fabulous. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for joining us today. Can I give you a fist bump? This is a lot of fun. So for Jay Magrisso, I'm Chris Davies, and thank you so much for joining us today. And on behalf of Jay and myself, we just want to remind everybody out there that if you believe it, you can achieve it.